Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am Sam Eagle, and these are some important safety instructions for you.
Sam.
Well, you can relax now. Everything's under control, and we'll be on our way to the Endor moon without any further delay.
To your right, if you saw this summer's blockbuster film Pearl Harbor starring Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett, you probably recognize these airplanes.
Teenagers, give them an inch, they swim all over you.
Yo, Kermit, my main frog.
What is it, Floyd?
We're gonna need a couple of more seconds to get this gig swinging.
What?
Every man's a king and every king's a clown. Once again, it's topsy-turvy day.
Hello, hi there. Welcome to my park. How you doing? Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Disney MGM Studios proudly presents Sorcery in the Sky. Lights. Camera. Action.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mongello, and this is show number 117 for the week of May 3rd, 2009. Thank you for tuning in once again. This week marks the 20th anniversary of Disney's Hollywood Studios, and to commemorate this event, I'm going to dedicate this entire show, and in fact, just a single segment, to Walt Disney World's third park. Disney historian and author Jim Korkis joins me at the studios to take a detailed walk through the park, looking at its history, stories, incredible details and tributes, and so much more. It's a fascinating virtual tour filled with things you may not have ever known about the studios and may just want to seek out on your next trip. I'll announce the winner of our last Walt Disney World Trivia Contest before playing some of your voicemails at the end of the show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. When the Disney MGM Studios opened on May 1st, 1989, Chairman Michael Eisner's dedication read, "Welcome to the Hollywood that never was and always will be." And Disney wanted to clearly evoke that golden age of Hollywood and take you back in time from the moment that you pass through the turnstiles. And over the past 20 years, Disney's Hollywood Studios has entertained guests from around the world with its shows, attractions, and entertainment that exists right here on its very streets. But like all of the Disney parks, it's all about story, and much of this park's beauty lies in those stories, both real and those imagineered. And today, in honor of the studio's 20th anniversary on May 1st, we're going to take a look at the history of the studios, some of its wonderful stories, and many of the incredible details often overlooked by guests. And joining me is world-renowned Disney historian, author, friend, and most importantly, I think, Disney enthusiast, Jim Korkis. Jim, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Lou. I'm just humbled by that introduction, and I'm just excited that you've relocated down here to Florida. We're very happy to have you down here, so hope we can get together more often, maybe do even some more of these podcast, and I'm very happy today to share stories, especially with you, because I know you've been here so often, and you know so much. So the challenge was, let's come up with some things that even Lou doesn't know. And yes, ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, that background music you hear, yes, we are a slave to Lou's desire for reality. We could be doing this in a nice, comfortable, quiet, air-conditioned room eating chocolate-covered cherries, but no, we're actually sitting right out here in front of Sid Cahuenga's at the Disney Hollywood studios. So you'll be joining us for a virtual experience of learning about the history of the studios, and hopefully maybe you'll find some things that you never knew before, so the next time you come, you'll see things a little bit differently.
Absolutely. That's always the goal. And first of all, ladies, please fan Jim a little bit more and get him some more grapes, please. So, yeah, I did think, as we were talking about this, we were doing this virtual tour, I said there's no better place than to sit right here. And we're sitting here at the crossroads. And maybe before we start, I think people always ask, what would Walt think? What would Walt think of Epcot? What would Walt think of... And I think it's an unfair question to a certain degree that really nobody can answer. But, I think we're able to speculate maybe a little bit more because of the unique nature of the studios.
I think you're absolutely right, Lou, on a couple of things. First off, when people say, what would Walt think, I think we can maybe sometimes make a guess based on the Walt of 1966, but what would the Walt of 2009 think about some of these things? He was always ahead of the curve, always, a couple of jumps ahead. But I think in this case, this is actually a pretty fair question because once the Disney Studios opened in the 30s, Walt was flooded by people, usually celebrities like a Mary Pickford or whatever, who wanted to come to the studio and actually meet Mickey Mouse. And so Walt got into the habit, because the studio was much smaller in those days, of even giving a personal tour and going around. And he knew which animators he could turn them over to, and they would talk or do a quick little sketch or whatever, and that would be wonderful. And he kept getting requests from people who wanted to come see the studio. So in 1941, I think a lot of folks are familiar with the movie Reluctant Dragon, where only half of it is the animated cartoon Reluctant Dragon. The other half is a tour of the Disney studios. And Walt was doing that for two purposes. One was to get some experience with live action, but second, for people around the world to see, okay, what does the Disney studios actually look like? What is this process of animation, which seems so magical and mystical? And of course, the funny thing is he mixed in his real studio staff, like Ward Kimball and all, with hired actors. So you're going into the story room, and the person doing the story pitch is actor Alan Ladd, before he became famous. So what are you trying to tell us, Walt? Well, Walt even considered at one point bringing his Carolwood Pacific miniature railroad and putting it on the back lot of the studio and opening up the studio on Saturday and Sundays for tours and having the little train ride there. He even considered a backstage, how is animation done experience behind the scenes thing for Disneyland. That was one of the proposals for the original Disneyland. By the 50s, this was pretty well set so that the publicity department under Joe Reddy would have usually a traffic boy, what we would consider an intern now, run VIPs through the studio. Sometimes there were business contacts who needed to be taken through. Sometimes friends and family of the people who worked there. So, for instance, Annette Funicello wanted her family to be given a tour, and her relatives, who were quite a many, a lot of them, to come over and do that. Or Fess Parker, one time said, yeah, my mom and dad want to see this. And so the traffic boy would pick him up at the security guard gate and walk him down the street past the commissary, make a right into the animation building and go up to the second floor. And they even had visual aids on the second floor to help explain the process of animation. Sometimes, depending upon what your relationship was with the people working there, you'd go in and talk with them. Everybody wanted to go up to the third floor where Walt was, and the tour guides were told, don't go on the third floor. But Walt was a good enough guy that sometimes he'd come down to the second floor and greet the tours and shake their hands, rub the head of the little kid or whatever. And then you'd go out of the animation building and go into the sound stages and sometimes see a scene being filmed for Johnny Tremaine or Westward Ho the Wagons. And this whole thing was about 2 to 3 hours. So I think if somebody had approached Walt and said, we're going to be doing a theme park and it's going to capture that behind-the-scenes experience of making a movie, making an animated film, he would have been right on board. It might not have looked the way that this ended up looking, but the concept, I think Walt would have bought into it.
And I think it's more this concept, what we have today with the Disney's Hollywood Studios, as opposed to maybe the original concept, which was a relatively small pavilion, located next door to Figment.
Well, that's true. Not a lot of people know that, Lucy. That's how you're so sharp. I have to be very careful that I've got some goodies here for you. Because, yes, Marty Sklar and Randy Bright, both Imagineers, once Epcot opened, they were starting to think, okay, what new pavilions can we develop? And so they came up with two that were almost put into production. One was Wonders of Life. But the other was going to be a pavilion devoted to movie making. And you're absolutely correct that it would be between the land and the Imagination pavilion. And that's because, of course, when Epcot was originally designed, the east side was the analytical side of the brain, which is why you have the angular pathways and the trees outside Universe of Energy. They're trimmed like a box and all of that. Whereas on the west side, it's the creative side, which is why the pathways are flowing and the horticulture is out of control, because you have the Imagination pavilion, you have the imaginative things that are going on in the land and the seas. So that's where you were going to put movie making, and it was going to be a huge backdrop of the sky, so you wouldn't notice it immediately. It would seem to blend in with the background, and as you got closer to the pavilion, the entranceway was like an entrance to an old movie theater palace. And when you went in, there would be an attraction called Great Movie Moments, and sometimes it was called Great Movie Moments Museum. But again, it was an audio-animatronic interaction with elements from movies, which, of course, later developed over here to the Great Movie Ride. And something that I was excited about but never developed was Ward Kimball, in that pavilion, developed a section called Mickey's Movie Land, which would have shown the behind-the-scenes creation of the classic Mickey Mouse cartoons. Ward, of course, had worked on the World of Motion Pavilion over there at Epcot, so that was going to happen. But it was Michael Eisner who stepped in and said, this is a much larger concept. This could be a half-day experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I've talked with Charlie Ridgway about that people don't realize that what we have today is very much a part of Michael Eisner's desire and Frank Wells' desire to say, hey, this can be so much more than a single pavilion.
Right, and actually it was a business need as well, because Typhoon Lagoon was opening, and that was considered a half-day attraction, that people wouldn't spend 8 to 10 hours at Typhoon Lagoon. You might go there in the morning for 4 hours, maybe a maximum of 6 hours, but about 4 hours, and then you'd go back to your resort, or you'd go to the theme parks and see the fireworks, or vice versa. You'd spend the early part of the day at a theme park, and then you'd take a break and finish it off at Typhoon Lagoon, a half-day experience, whereas Magic Kingdom is like a 3-day experience to try and get everything done. But Eisner was clever enough to go, not everybody's going to go to that water park. We need another half-day experience. And so that's what this was going to be, because they didn't think it was going to be that popular. How foolish they were, but they didn't think it was going to be that popular. And so that's why the total amount of acreage for the Disney MGM Studios was exactly the same, or very, very close to Disneyland. And in fact, the entire design was similar to Disneyland, where you had your main street, here it's Hollywood Boulevard, and you're going down to the castle, in this case Grauman's Chinese Theater, and you're there at the hub, and then the spokes going out into the different areas for that to happen. And of course, with the hat, and we're not going to talk about the hat, but the hat ruined, of course, the largest hidden Mickey in the world. Because if you pick up one of the old guide maps for the Disney MGM Studios, or find an old aerial map on Google, and you take a look from the top, you see that hub area is Mickey's face, and the planters create the eyes. Echo Lake is one of his ears. It's just amazing. It's one of those aha moments. But once you put the hat there, all of that is gone. But yes, a half-day experience, so that's why there weren't an awful lot of attractions when the park opened. But within the first week, they found they were closing the park just an hour or two after the park opened.
And it wasn't long before they decided, you know what, we need to build Sunset Boulevard because this is just not enough room.
Right, and we're going to be talking about Sunset Boulevard later, but yeah, there were all sorts of things that were going to go on Sunset Boulevard that never made it. You know, a Dick Tracy ride and Baby Herman's roller coaster, Baby Buggy ride, all of that, a lot of different plans for Sunset, but immediately it was, yes, we've got to expand that. And so the entrance to Sunset was, when the park opened, that's where the outdoor theater was, that Bowl Theater, and they had a lot of shows there. They had a Muppet show, they had a Dick Tracy show, and they had, of course, the absolute beautiful Disney girl dancers where the legs just go on forever and ever and ever. And as a kid, I had that same experience at Disneyland, seeing the Kids of the Kingdom, and I thought, do women really have legs that go on forever and ever? And when the studios opened here, I said, Disney finds them. They still exist out there.
Well, the one thing about the studios, like every Disney theme park, is obviously the level of authenticity. And with a park like this, it was so very important because this was the Hollywood that maybe never was or was meant to be. But there are a lot of references to that golden age of Hollywood. And we're sitting here right by the entrance, and it starts even before you walk into the gate.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And as you know, I grew up in Glendale, California, out in Southern California, and actually spent an awful lot of weekends and all going down to the real Hollywood Boulevard and Vine and Sunset. And unfortunately, in the 70s and 80s, that was not not a place you would want to be after dark. So for me, when the studios opened here, it was terrific. It was those best elements, and it was those elements that I wanted to remember. Because, again, Michael Eisner also pointed out that it wasn't the Hollywood that was a geographical location on a map. It was a state of mind. It was that Hollywood of the 30s and 40s that you remembered and that you saw in the movies. You know, my gosh, how magnificent that is, and I could do that. And of course, the challenge facing the Disney company is the Disney company wasn't doing any live action movies in the 30s and 40s. It was all animated films. So we had to go to MGM UA and license not just the name of MGM and the Leo the Lion logo, which was a whole separate negotiation, but licensed 250 of the films from the MGM library. Now, there was a package deal for a lot of them because most people don't care about Min and Bill, the 1931 MGM movie, but some had to be negotiated separately. So, for instance, James Bond was a separate negotiation because Indiana Jones was going to be the James Bond stunt show, but the licensing fee was just too high, so that didn't happen. In Great Movie Ride, Wizard of Oz was a separate negotiation. So that's why when you leave Casablanca and you go through that wind tunnel of Mickey as Sorcerer's Apprentice, that was originally going to be the tornado carrying you to Oz. And I would never recommend this to the listeners, but if you're in the last car, if you lean out and look over, you'll see as the car goes that on the floor there's samples of different gold paint that Imagineers put there to try and create the yellow brick road, which was going to look best under certain lights and all of that. But the rumor at the time, and this is not confirmed, it's just a rumor, was that Turner was charging $1 million a minute for Wizard of Oz. And so you decided, we'll cut the tornado. Let's go for the bang for our buck with that. And then, of course, we have the little scene with Dorothy, and Liza Minnelli does the voice of Dorothy. And there's a hidden Oz. When you take a look at that scene, take a look. There's 3 globes. The lower globe is an O, and then you take a look at the yellow brick road, and it creates a Z. So it's a hidden Oz there. But anyway, we had to go to MGM to get those for that. But you're right. You want to start right here at the beginning of the gates?
Let's start at the beginning.
Okay. And as we enter the Disney MGM studios, we see these green fin-like things. This is an example of streamlined, modern architecture. And this was actually the architecture for the Pan Pacific Auditorium in Los Angeles. The Pan Pacific Auditorium was built in 1935. Now, you note I'm going to be saying an awful lot of dates because what we're going to find is as we move along Hollywood Boulevard, the dates keep increasing. That's part of the storyline, the chronological storyline. So we're starting in 1935, basically. And the Pan Pacific was the huge convention center, so that's where circuses were and the ice capades and basketball games. Elvis Presley played there. So you're already getting the impression that you're going into a venue subconsciously where there's going to be a variety of exciting entertainment things for you. And the Pan Pacific was designed by architect Welton Beckett, who was a good friend of Walt Disney's. And in fact, Walt wanted Beckett to do the architecture for Disneyland. And Beckett was the one who came to Walt and said, "Walt, trust me, nobody's ever done this before. You're the only one who knows what you want. You better have your people do it because no other architect's going to understand." They remained great friends for the rest of their lives. Now, the sad thing is the LA Convention Center opened in 71, 72, and so all of the venues went to there, so Pan Pacific fell into disrepair because it was old. And ironically, the Pan Pacific burned down 1989, the same year this park opened. So, you know, the one remembrance of this are those gates that are coming in. And I guess if listeners want to see what the Pan Pacific looked like, they could go to that 1980 movie, Xanadu, with Olivia Newton-John. Yeah. Because, yes, you can see exactly what that looks like, and then next time you come and visit the park, you'll get that experience. What do you want to talk about next?
Crossroads. I think we're sitting right in front of the crossroads of the world, sort of the first thing that people see as they walk in.
Absolutely. And again, this is another example of what the Imagineers call shrink and edit. Shrink and edit is you take an actual icon or a building or whatever, and you shrink it, you make it smaller, and then you do editing. Sometimes the editing is a change in color, as we'll see on some of the buildings on Hollywood Boulevard, whatever. But here, Crossroads of the World is an actual physical location. It's on Wilshire Boulevard, and it was the first almost sort of mini mall. The reason it's called Crossroads of the World is because the retail shops were done up with different styles of architecture, Mexican, Turkish, French, English, whatever. But the entranceway was this spire with an 8-foot diameter globe, you know, so it was literally the crossroads of the world. And one of the reasons it's here is because, of course, in the 30s and 40s, movies were not just an American experience, they were an international experience. And people internationally were looking, you know, to the American film industry, and this was where people from all over the world would come. I want to go to Hollywood. Now, of course, with the edit, one of the things they did is they have Mickey Mouse on top. That's done by sculptor Perry Russ, R-U-S-S. I always like to try and give people credit because Disney doesn't always, and some of those names get lost. Mickey is 5 foot 3 inches tall there.
That makes me taller than Mickey. I just want to be clear.
Oh, there you go. Well, you're not mouse size. How about that? And you know, one of the things, and you know this, Lou, is that Orlando here is the lightning strike capital of the world. And as we're sitting here, we're seeing all these lightning rods sticking up on tops of buildings and all of that. So what's missing from Mickey's head?
A lightning rod.
A lightning.
Or is it?
Or is it? Oh, maybe you even know the answer to this. We don't want to have a little pole sticking out of the top of Mickey's head, but Mickey's right ear is higher, and so actually Mickey's right ear is copper. And then it is grounded from there. So if lightning ever hit, because this is about 44 feet tall, if it hit, it would hit Mickey's right ear and then would get dispersed as that went down. Okay, and right behind us, this was one of my favorite places when the park opened because you could buy press books and all sorts of things. But again, it's gone through these changes. This is Sid Cahuenga's. Now, Cahuenga Boulevard is one of the main thoroughfares in Hollywood. In fact, the Cahuenga Pass goes through the Santa Monica Mountains, splits that through. And at the bottom of the Cahuenga Pass, that's where the Hollywood Bowl is. And there's actually a great newsstand, the Cahuenga newsstand. So when you go to California, go to Cahuenga and go down there, and there's a great newsstand, has all of this great stuff there. Now, the Sid comes from Sid Grauman. So this is also a little bit of the foreshadowing that Imagineers are doing, because we're going to see Grauman's Chinese Theater. And Sid Grauman, a good friend of Walt's as well. Now, the storyline the Imagineers say about Sid Cahuenga's here is that there was a resident of Hollywood, and as Hollywood was developing, this guy didn't want to move, didn't want to sell, and so Hollywood built up around him, and so he then transformed his house into one of those souvenir stands, 10 T-shirts for $1, type of thing that you could see. True story or fake story? Because we've already talked about Cahuenga. Cahuenga was actually the name of the leader of a tribe of Indians that lived in the Santa Monica Mountains.
I'm going to say that it's true that this house is there, and this mall was built around him.
You're absolutely correct. This was inspired. There wasn't a Sid Cahuenga. That's true, but it was inspired by what was called the Jane's House, and that's still on Hollywood Boulevard today. And basically, the owner of the house said, I was born here, my family was born here, I'm going to die here. And so no amount of money could convince him, as expensive as that real estate got. And so he did, in fact, eventually start selling souvenirs out of there for tourists who were on Hollywood Boulevard. And today it's actually he's long since passed away. It's incorporated as part of a mini mall out there on Hollywood Boulevard, so people can still see that. That's the Jane's House.
Yeah, and I love this, and I think it's one of these overlooked gems. There's so much to see. There's a lot of kitschy little things outside, including the signpost with mile markers, but lots to see inside, and lots of souvenirs that maybe you can't bring home. Although I would love to bring back the Bert's jacket from Mary Poppins. I don't have $65,000 laying around. But, even before we start moving down Hollywood, another place I think that people sort of go right by, don't take a look at, don't sort of stop and appreciate, is Oscar's service station, which again has significance in name.
Well, you're absolutely right, Lou, and that's why I'm glad you give people like me an opportunity to talk about this, because people don't look up, they don't look down, sometimes they don't look on the walls, and they miss some of the outstanding things that are out there, and that even includes cast members who work here and leadership who they sometimes don't know the stories, and so sometimes changes happen, not because people are malicious or greedy or whatever, they just didn't know. And Oscar's service station, a great story, because, again, we're in the Hollywood of the 30s and 40s, so in that case, the main transportation is going to be the red car. Automobiles really start to develop towards the end of the 40s, and of course, when we go into the 50s, they really take off. And but there are still cars, and so you need to fill them up with gas, and so these were filling stations. But again, one gasoline and oil is pretty much the same as the other. So filling stations became service stations. So maybe some of the listeners remember, even as a kid, driving in to a gas station and the attendant would come out and check the air in the tire and look under the hood and give you a map and clean the windshield. All of this was free because of the service. Super service. And it's Oscar's Super Service, and of course it's Oscar's Super Service because
of the Oscar statue.
Absolutely, the Academy Award, because we're in Hollywood. Now, here's one of the sad changes that happened is in the front window when this opened, they used to have, because again, in the window of the service station, you would display some of the products that you were selling, and so they had cans of Mojave oil. And again, that was a great foreshadowing of coming attractions of the story. I can see you're smiling, so you know where Mojave oil is. Where is it, Lou?
In the back
Catastrophe Canyon.
Thank you.
Yes, that tanker truck back there. Now, and if we went to Oscar's Super Service, what would we get over there? Why would we be going to Oscar's Super Service if we were a guest coming into the park? We'd be going there because we didn't bring our car.
We didn't bring our stroller or wheelchair either.
Right, a wheeled vehicle, strollers or wheelchairs. So that's why it's there at a service station, servicing wheeled vehicles for that. Well, and here we are. We're actually on Prospect Avenue. Prospect Avenue became Hollywood Boulevard because 1886, that's when Horace Wilcox and his wife came out here, because Hollywood was actually part of two Spanish land grants, Rancho La Brea and Rancho Las Feliz. And so Wilcox bought a section of Rancho La Brea, and they had an apricot and a fig ranch, and his wife named it Hollywood, after a place that they had stayed in Chicago, which was a woods with holly and all of that. She loved the name, so named it Hollywood. And actually there was Prospect Avenue, but when the area became incorporated as a city in 1903 and then became part of the city of Los Angeles in 1910, they took the name Hollywood, and Prospect Avenue officially became Hollywood Boulevard. So here we have Prospect, which of course is where young actors and actresses came with the prospect of going into business, and it's turning into Hollywood Boulevard. And along with your listeners, we're going to be taking a little walk down this Hollywood Boulevard here, huh?
Analogous to, really, the Main Street USA of the Magic Kingdom. It's the same type of thing. And you've alluded to this before about how you start to see previews of what's to come, and how, like Main Street, in time, the architecture changes. It grows. This town grows with time. And as you enter Main Street, and we've talked in the past about how you see the movie posters, which really are signs for the attractions you're going to see. You see a little bit of that here, but instead of movie posters, you see billboards.
Right, and in fact, the billboards actually tell us when the story is going to end. Pan Pacific is 1935, Crossroads 1936. We're going to be talking about the Dark Room, which is 1938. But when we take a look at the posters up there, we see one billboard, we see one for the Hollywood Canteen. Now, the Hollywood Canteen was something that was opened during the war for servicemen, and it was actually staffed by celebrities who came in and danced with the servicemen and made them free meals and things like that. But it closed after VJ Day, so we know that this story is going to go up to 1945, but it's not going to go beyond. And the other reason we know that is by the billboard, the Hollywoodland sign up there, because Hollywoodland was a real estate development. And that was in 1923, and the Hollywoodland sign was actually a real estate billboard. Come over here, take a look at this. And that was on Mount Lee at Griffith Park. And each of those letters were 50 feet high, was 450 feet long, covered with 40,000 20-watt light bulbs. And there was a little man who lived in a little cottage under the second L, and it was his job to change out the light bulbs. Most of us would like a job like that now, any job right now, but most of us would like that job. Now, the sign fell into disrepair, and they donated it to the city of Los Angeles in 1945, which is when Los Angeles pulled down the land sign. So it wasn't like Rocketeer where somebody smashes into it. They pulled down the land sign, but they left Hollywood up there because it just seemed already to be an icon for that. And so we know it's not 1945 yet, but that'll be the end of the story because they haven't taken the land off of that yet. And then, of course, it fell into disrepair again in the 70s, and so you had celebrities actually adopt individual letters. So Hugh Hefner has adopted one letter, Andy Williams has, Gene Autry has. So originally you adopted it for $28,000, and then you had to do upkeep each year for that. And then also the other billboard we have up here is for the red cars, Pacific Electric Trolley. And this is going to be a very important story when we get up to Sunset Boulevard. But that was the main way of getting around Hollywood, which, again, is why we're not seeing a lot of cars on Hollywood Boulevard, because people would be using the red car. Walt would have used the red car. It was the most efficient and least expensive form of transportation. And the reason it disappeared was not because of Judge Doom, but because of General Motors, Standard Oil, and Firestone got together as a conspiracy, put it out of business so that people would be forced to buy cars. And we know it's conspiracy because they were taken to court in the 1950s, and the court determined, yes, these people conspired to kill the red car. But by then, the red car was long dead, and cars had taken over, and they didn't even have to pay financial penalties to redo the red car. But, this is all part of the story, but hey, it's time for us to, we've been sitting here for a long time here. Time for us to get, and it's a beautiful day out here. Time for us to get up and start walking down Hollywood Boulevard and discover some things.
Sounds good. All right, so we're now looking down Hollywood Boulevard, as it were. And we have the beautiful Sorcerer Mickey hat in the distance. I know you're a big fan.
Well, again, I was one of those people where people told me with a straight face, this is only temporary. This is only here for 1 year. And I've since learned that whenever Disney puts up concrete and steel, it's not temporary. And as you pointed out earlier, Lou, this is very much like Main Street USA in Disneyland, but this is the Main Street of Hollywood, Hollywood Boulevard. And again, very similar to Main Street at Disneyland, you have actual buildings, but they're at a smaller proportion. And they also tell stories. You know, we alluded to over here on the right-hand side, the dark room. And this, again, was built in 1938. The original was built on 1938. It's on Wilshire Boulevard. Today it's actually a tequila bar. but the camera still is there as part of the tequila bar. So I guess if you have enough tequilas, that makes sense. And this is an example of what is called programmatic architecture. Now, that's the technical term. What us common people refer to is California crazy. But programmatic architecture, if any of you who are listening who are doing your reports for school and all of that's what that is. Okay, and what that meant was that the structure looked like what was being sold or serviced inside. So the most common example is a huge hot dog and a huge bun, and inside you're selling hot dogs. And there's several of those actually in Hollywood. In fact, there's one here in Florida on Colonial Drive, and it's actually had a recommendation as one of the top hot dog restaurants in the world. They have these stickers.
I see a research trip in our future.
Yes, and it's great. They have like 20 different hot dogs you can get there. But anyway, or you have a giant donut and donuts. So, of course, the dark room was a camera shop. And, of course, here at the studios, you also have the camera material in there. And, of course, this is so iconic that, yes, they also use it over at Universal Studios. So I often have people say, oh, they stole that from Disney. No, that actually exists from 1938. That's on Wilshire Boulevard. And across the street from that's Mickey's of Hollywood. And, of course, that alludes to Frederick's of Hollywood that sells lingerie. But interestingly enough, the design of the building is three different buildings, none of which is Frederick's of Hollywood. In fact, the side that we're looking at here, which is the entrance closest to Crossroads of the World, this is a building that's also on Wilshire. This is the Baines building, B-A-I-N-E-S. And Baines was the guy who started the Hollywood Christmas Parade. And so what Disney was looking for a variety of buildings, iconic buildings that would bring to mind that 30s and 40s, a variety of architecture as you go through. But to me, what's exciting is not the outside of the building, but the inside of the building. And I remember I came here when the park opened in 1989 because my brother Mike was actually working here. He came out from California. He auditioned. He was one of the directors in Screen Test, which is an attraction which is long gone. And I came out here and I thought, boy, what a great place for a vacation, but who could ever work out here? You know, unless you're working for a hotel or a restaurant or a theme park, there's no jobs. 6 years later, I'm out here. Okay, so anyway, I went in and I was just so blown away because the first room is dedicated to Mickey Mouse in Steamboat Willie. So you have the big statue of Mickey and Steamboat Willie, and if you look to the top, along the ceiling, you have icons and figures and all that relating to Steamboat Willie. Then you go into the second room, and you have the band concert, which is Mickey's first color cartoon. And in '89, it was much more impressive because if you stepped outside on the windows, they had metal silhouettes cut out of funny animals. So you would be standing outside and you would be looking at the window of these metal silhouette of these animals, looking at the band concert, and then Mickey inside. Those are long since gone so that there's more display space. And again, I'm sure they're gone too because people said, well, what is this? I don't understand this. And then the final room, of course, is Mickey and Fantasia as Sorcerer's Apprentice. And again, that's the first feature-length film with Mickey Mouse. But then the story of Mickey Mouse stops there. And why is that, Lou? Why does the story stop with Fantasia? Do you know? I'll help you out here. Fantasia was released in 1940, and then So we've got the first Mickey Mouse cartoon. We've got the first color cartoon. We've got the first feature-length cartoon. When is the next big change in Mickey's career? I'll bet it's Mickey Mouse Club and Disneyland in the 50s. And remember, our story ends in 45. So we end with Fantasia. How cool is that? Yeah, and it's one of those aha moments, isn't it?
I had an aha moment.
where you go, well, of course, it all makes sense. You know, and it's what Imagineer John Hench, and I got a wonderful chance to meet him and listen to him, calls the language of vision, where you're not consciously aware of how all 5 of your senses are being manipulated.
Right.
And again, this is one of the differences between a theme park and an amusement park, is a theme park tells a story. And so the story we're telling here, as I said, is Hollywood of the 30s and the 40s. So everything has to reinforce that story because you don't want anything to kick you out of the story. So on Main Street, you hear turn-of-the-century music. And if not turn-of-the-century music, at least music that evokes that era, like from Music Man, right? But if you played Britney Spears' Toxic, you're no longer in Main Street at the turn of the century, right? So yeah,
we're going to ignore the fact that High School Musical is playing in the background right now.
Yeah, well, and again, the way you and they shoehorn in all of these stories. So High School Musical 3 is in the background here because, well, it's a movie. See, and a movie's being made, and you're part of seeing this movie being made. And it's that whole thing with G-Force Records and Rock and Roller Coaster, which none of us buy. It's a whole convoluted, and I might tell that story a little later, but it's a convoluted story of where, you know, instead of saying, well, this is Hollywood of the 30s, 40s, it's like, well, in the 30s there was this, but then this happened, and then it brought this, and that's why there's this guitar here now, and you know, and it's like, forget it. Right. It's not part of the story. You've ruined the story. Forget it. So, you know, and across the street from Mickey's of Hollywood is Celebrity Five and Dime. Now, a lot of listeners, and myself included, go to the Dollar Tree or Everything for $1, or, you know, those type of stores. Well, during the Depression, Woolworth, F.W. Woolworth, came up with the concept of the Great 5-Cent Store, which he then expanded into the 5 and Dime. And so that basically, even during the Depression, you could go into the store and for a minimal amount of money, you could buy a plate or a handkerchief or a cheap toy for a child or whatever. And these were very popular. So in addition to Woolworth, you had Newberry's, you had Cress, all of that. And so we have a Celebrity 5 and Dime here. And what's terrific to me is the facade of the building here is based after a facade of a building on Hollywood Boulevard that was the Newberry's in Hollywood. And today it's the Hollywood Toy and Costume Company. And the coloring here is a little different, and that's part of that edit version. But the architecture, exactly the same. And it's Celebrity 5 and Dime because, of course, we're in Hollywood, so you've got the celebrities. And also in the 5 and Dimes, they had lunch counters. And in Hollywood, there was that, you know, rumor that you would get discovered at a lunch counter. So Lana Turner, actress Lana Turner, discovered at Schwab's drugstore and all of that. So this is the Celebrity 5 and Dime. So this is a wonderful opportunity for this. And right next to the Celebrity 5 and Dime is a story, brand new story, fits in perfectly, but nobody knows it. There was the building Sweet Success, which used to have candy, and now it's a seamstress place, you know, where you can get embroidery on your hat and the whole bit. And so they changed the name to Head to Toe, which of course is a very clever name. But if you look closely, you'll see that the actual name is Edith's Head to Toe, which refers to the very famous costumer from the movies of the 40s and all, Edith Head. And this is a contribution from an outstanding Imagineering storyman, Michael Slater. Some people know him as Sean Slater. Terrific storyman. Understands the business need, but also understands how can you incorporate that story, but make it subtle so it's not hitting you over the head and you go, oh, aha. And one of the things in Head to Toe, which I think a lot of people miss, is it has a very, very high ceiling. So instead of looking there, look up at the ceiling, and surrounding the wall, all those framed posters of Disney animated cartoons, but only from the 30s and 40s. So, but again, most people, they're just, their eye is straight. Oh, I've got to get down this way from this point to this point, and they don't look down at the ground. They don't look up. They don't get those ahas.
I've been preaching to look up and look around for years, and I think some of the stories that you told, especially here in Mickey's of Hollywood, is just a brilliant example of the fact that nothing you see is accidental. Everything you see is based on, and 99.9% of the guests are never going to understand it, they're never going to see it, they're never going to appreciate it, and it's wonderful the fact that they take so much time to put such detail in there and be so careful about it.
And again, Imagineer Joe Rohde, I talked with him about Animal Kingdom and what the reason for some of the choices and things that were made. And I said, well, Joe, are you going to publish a book about this or something so that people know what this is? And he said, absolutely not, because our feeling is it's the same feeling with hidden Mickeys. People get so obsessed with finding the hidden Mickey that they don't enjoy the rest of the experience, or they get so obsessed with finding this detail or that detail that they miss the larger story. They miss the forest for the trees. Now, I always feel that there's a balance there. I think, and one of the reasons I share all of these stories is I think by knowing these stories, there's that richer appreciation. This feels right. Now I know why it feels right. And I wonder, what are all the things that Jim isn't telling me that maybe I should take a look around? Because, we're just down the end of Hollywood Boulevard, for crying out loud. We've almost spent an hour doing this,
And there's so much more.
And there's so much more.
There's so many other buildings, the Max Factor building, so much detail inside.
So here we are at the end of Hollywood Boulevard. I guess we're going to head over to Echo Lake right now. Yeah.
Sounds good. So as we continued our way down Hollywood Boulevard, we were talking about some of the different styles of architecture and the Art Deco and the Spanish Revival and just how beautiful it is, and how even individual stores, individual buildings have a number of different facades, a number of different styles, and a great example of that is right at the end of Hollywood Boulevard at Keystone Clothiers.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, Lou. In fact, there's 3 entrances into Keystone Clothiers. Each entrance is a different facade. So they didn't commit to, we'll just do this one building. They're actually giving you more bang for your buck, more value. You're getting, 3 different styles, 3 different little emotional architectural triggers here. And, of course, Keystone Clothiers is here because it's just on the side of Keystone Street, which is going to be near Echo Lake. And, of course, Keystone Street is very famous because that's the home of the Mack Sennett Studios, the Keystone Cops. That's why they were. I always wondered, why is the Keystone? Because the studio was on Keystone Street, and you filmed a lot of stuff outside. You filmed a lot of stuff over at Echo Park. Echo Park's a man-made lake there, and in fact, I remember this really funny silent Harold Lloyd film where his heart is broken, so he's trying to commit suicide, and he's standing on this curved bridge at Echo Lake with this huge boulder that he's holding in his hands, and he jumps off the bridge in the hope that, of course, the rock will take him down and drown, and he jumps off the bridge, and the water doesn't even come up to his waist because it's that shallow. Although there are fish in there, I've been to Echo Lake and fished the real one in Hollywood, and there's bluegill and all of that you can do. It was out there with my dad and my brothers doing that. So Echo Park and Echo Lake, and again, it was called Echo Lake because when it was being built, the supervisor was on one side of the lake, and on the other side, he heard some of his construction crew, and they were talking very badly about him. But they thought they were so far away he wouldn't hear, but there was an echo. So that's how it became Echo Lake. But as soon as they planted all of the horticulture, the landscaping, that muffled the sound, so the echo no longer exists there. But it's famous for its lily pads, and in fact, the whole area of Echo Lake still pretty much exists the way it is in the 30s and 40s because it became a low-rent district, so people didn't have money to rehab the houses and things like that. So if you go there, you'll see some of the styles that we see here at the studios, around Echo Lake. But a little further up, this is a favorite location of mine. This is Peavy's. This used to be Lakeside News when the park opened, and so it was a newsstand, and you could buy Disney comic books for crying out loud. What a great concept. But this is Peavy's. A lot of people don't know Peavy. Peavy was the mechanic in one of my favorite films of all time, Rocketeer. Love Rocketeer. Love Jennifer Connelly in Rocketeer. Love Bill Campbell in Rocketeer. Great film. They even used to have a Rocketeer over here in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater that would shoot up. But Peavy was the great inventor and all. So you have, for this beverage stand, you have, all of these crazy devices and all of that for that. Now, as much as I love that, this also brought me great heartache. Not because Lakeside News disappeared, but you'll notice the office door here. Thank heavens they returned this, because at one time they had scraped this off. It says Holly, Vermont Realty Office. And then up above on the window it had Holly, Vermont Realty Office. And eventually, they scraped it off the window. They said, well, that signage conflicts with the PV signage and all that. Again, this is an example of people not understanding the story. When Walt came to Hollywood, I think most people, especially with D23, know now that the Disney Brothers studio started in 1923. And at that point, Walt was living with his Uncle Robert. And so when he got the contract to start, filming in October of 23, he couldn't do this in Uncle Robert's house. So he had to find some space. So he went out of Uncle Robert's house and actually walked down the block. This was in walking distance was the Holly, Vermont Realty Office. And he went in and he says, I need some office space. I just need enough room. It just needs to be large enough that I could swing a cat. I don't know where that expression ever comes from, but that's what he said. And I can only pay $10 a month. And they said, well, for that price, what we've got is we've got an office space right here in the building here. And so sure enough, that is the home of the very first Disney Brothers studio from October 1923 to February 1924. So they were only there for a couple of months, and they instantly made enough money that they were able to actually go further down the street to Kingswell and do the Kingswell studio that most people know and there's pictures of now, and then in 1926 to Hyperion. But this was the very first Walt Disney Studios. And remember, we're talking about the 30s and 40s, and so Walt was there in the 20s. That's why there's a vacancy sign up in the upper window there. They couldn't rent that office after Walt had it because it was such a small little office space for that to happen. But yeah, what a great story, and how many guests pass by that every day don't know that story. Well, in fact, let's look across Echo Lake here. We're looking at Hollywood and Vine. Before fast food restaurants, there were cafeterias like Clifton's Cafeteria, and you could go in, and instead of sit down and a waiter would come and serve you a meal, you could buy sort of a la carte. So you could buy a meat plate, or you could buy a vegetable plate, or you could buy a dessert, that type of thing. And so Walt and Roy in the early days would go into a cafeteria very similar to this, and Walt would buy the meat plate and Roy would buy the vegetable plate, and then they'd split it in half, in order to eat. And this is actually designed after one of those very famous cafeterias that was on Vine Boulevard, very close to Hollywood Boulevard. And in Hollywood, it literally later became a post office. But yes, this is one of those places where Walt and Roy would have gone in to eat. And as I said, the architecture surrounding the lake here, very similar to what you would find in the Echo Lake area, and very eclectic, all of that, and just adds to that feel that this just seems right. Now, one of the things that, as I get older, I just tell people that I just need to pull out my old man cane and, wave it in the air, those young kids, that music is too loud, I can't understand the lyrics of that, whatever. There are just certain things that seem to stick in my craw, and it's because so many things are done right, and you just see that one thing that is out of place, and you go, oh my gosh, what is that? And right next to Hollywood and Vine is the Primetime Cafe. And yes, there were some TVs in the 40s and all that, but the big push for TVs really weren't until the 50s. What sticks in my craw is the name Primetime Cafe, because the term primetime did not exist until the 60s. And it happened when FCC Chairman Newton Minow in 1961 gave his a speech about TV being a vast wasteland, that all you had was wrestling and game shows and gangsters and all of that, that there should be early hours, prime time that was set aside, for educational purposes, to enlighten people, or, entertainment for children or the entire family, or else the government should come in and regulate. So prime time is really from 61 and later, so what it's doing here. But again, I love primetime as a cafe. The homage to Meatloaf and motherhood and Formica and take your elbows off the table, and you're not getting a dessert till you finish your peas and all of that. But why they came up with that, I don't know, and it just doesn't seem to make sense. And in all the research that I've done and all the people that I've talked to, I haven't been able to come up with an answer. We were talking earlier too about how sometimes changes happen at the park, and change is always going to happen. Disney's middle name is Jell-O, but sometimes change happens because people don't know the story, they don't understand the story. And over Hollywood and Vine here, it just reminded me, up there in the window you see the little sign that says no actors. And that was very true. In the early days of Hollywood, the lower level would usually be the business, and then the upper level, you would oftentimes rent out to other businesses, or you would rent out as rooms, whatever. But you never rented to actors because they were of low moral value, or they might skip out without, paying the bill, or they'd have wild parties or whatever. So that's why no actors. Real discrimination, but yes, that happened. That happened very much in Hollywood. Now, if you look down a couple of windows there, you see Eddie Valiant's office. And of course, we're all smiling. Eddie Valiant, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And again, this is a story that takes place 45, 46, around there. So again, that's very much in keeping with that. And we see the silhouette of Roger, bursting through there. But when this park opened, and I came here and I saw it, and I wish I had taken a picture, I didn't. There was a sign in Eddie Valiant's window, and it mimicked the sign that said no actors. It said no tunes. And I just laughed because, it references the no actor sign, but it also references the fact that Eddie Valiant at this point in his career doesn't want to deal with tunes and all of that. But then we had a leader come to the studios, and he goes, "We're going to be having character breakfast in there. We can't have no tunes up there. Guests will think there's no characters in there, so take that sign off." And it's never been replaced, for that to happen. And so, again, Eddie Valiant, we're talking 45, 46. Peavy's Rocketeer takes place in 1938 Hollywood. So, again, we're keeping in that time period. Up there, we see that, we talk about foreshadowing. We see that billboard for maroon cartoons,
Even the crates, and I'm a big fan of the crates and garbage pails. Even the crates outside of Min and Bill's all reference movies from that same time period, or even, like the producers.
Absolutely. You have a crate going to Charles Foster Kane from the Rosebud Sled Company. You have a bicycle that's going to Miss Dorothy Gale of Kansas. You have a crate that's going to Rick's American Cafe in Casablanca. People miss that all the time. They even, and there's an example, too. We were talking about Min and Bill, the Dockside Diner there. Min and Bill was actually a very famous film, but people have forgotten it now. Came out 1930, 1931, and it featured Marie Dressler, who won the Academy Award as Best Actress for that film that year, as a keeper of a dockside diner, and she had a drunk boyfriend played by Wallace Beery Bill, and, the situations they went through. And that ship, and it's really not a ship, it's a building, that was built by the same guy who built the Columbia at Disneyland. Huh. And I wish I could remember his name offhand here. I want to say Ray Wallace or Ray Williams, something like that. But, he started working for the Disney Company in 1957 and built a lot of our ships. So that is, even though it's a building, it's built like an actual working ship. And if you take a look at the flags along the top spell out a message. And we're not going to reveal everything. You're going to have to go. It's just like when you go to Typhoon Lagoon and they have the flags out there. The flags tell you something. There's something on Min and Bill, because I want you to go and see Min and Bill, for crying out loud. Somebody should remember, there was that film, and it was a Best Actress Oscar for that. And right across from that, absolutely, one of my favorites at Disney, any Disney theme park, it's Gertie the dinosaur. And again, here's something where people don't understand the story. Gertie the Dinosaur was a animated cartoon. It was released in 1914. It was done by Winsor McCay. Winsor McCay was a newspaper cartoonist. He did a very popular comic strip called Little Nemo in Slumberland. He also performed in vaudeville. He was a vaudeville performer, did chalk talks and quick sketches type of thing. He did editorial cartoons. Very, very talented man. Well, in the Sunday papers, and the color cartoon sections were much more elaborate in those days, they had little pictures that you could cut out, and then you would staple it together or paper clip it together, and you could flip, and you'd have that little flip book. And his son just loved those. And so Winsor McCay thought, gee, you should be able to draw that and just film that, and that should work. And so he did a very short cartoon, just a couple of minutes long, of Little Nemo in Slumberland. And to show you how insane this guy was, he painted every single frame of film, so that when it was projected, you don't just get an animated cartoon, it's in color. But he showed it to audiences, and he showed it as part of his vaudeville act, and people thought he had gotten midgets, small people, little people, and dressed them up, to do this. All right. So he does another cartoon, and this is about a mosquito. And so the mosquito lands on this person, a very funny-looking mosquito, and he starts sucking the blood, and he gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and explodes. And who would have thought violence in cartoons would be so funny? But people thought it was a puppet. So for his third attempt, it's like, I've got to do something where people, are just so blown away. It's not like, oh, I know how that's done. I know how they swallow fire. I know it's cold fire they use. At the time, the New York Museum had a dinosaur skeleton that had been, discovered. There was a lot of publicity, a lot of attention, so he decided to do a cartoon about dinosaurs. Now remember, this is 1914, so their cells have not been invented yet. So he drew 10,000 drawings by himself on rice paper. And it had to be rice paper because it had to be thin enough so that you could see the background, so you could trace the background. Because you didn't just draw the character, you had to redraw the background 10,000 times with pen and ink. And they didn't have peg holes in those days. And so he has little X's at the top of each drawing, like an architect would be, to register this. So he films this, and he uses it as part of his vaudeville act. So he goes on stage dressed in a tuxedo. He's got a lion tamer's whip in one hand, and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my new pet, Gertie." And he whacks the whip, and behind him is the movie screen. Gertie comes out of the cave and comes right out and looks at the audience. And he says, "Gertie, lift your left leg." And he whacks the whip, and she lifts the left leg. And the audience is going insane. How did he train a dinosaur to lift its leg? Well, he had drawn it. He knew exactly what was going on. At one point he goes, "Gertie, you look a little hungry," so he takes a pumpkin, he throws it up, and he times it so the pumpkin goes right behind the movie screen, just as he had animated a pumpkin going into Gertie's mouth and Gertie eating it. And at the end of the act, he says, "Okay, we're going to say goodbye now." He walks up to the screen. He disappears behind the screen because he had animated a little version of himself in a tuxedo with the lion tamer's whip, getting on Gertie's back and Gertie carrying him off. Audiences went insane. This was the first example of what is called personality in animation. Personality animation, and sometimes it's called character animation too, is what Disney does. It's you laugh because of the character, not because what the character is doing. Because up until that time, a lot of animated cartoons, any of the funny antics could be interchangeable with any single character, But with Donald Duck, only Donald Duck will act in a certain way, right? Or one of the examples I gave is when Archie Bunker comes home and he sees somebody sitting in his chair, the audience howls with laughter. Nothing funny has happened. Nothing funny has been said, but you know what Archie is going to do about anybody who sits in his chair. And so it's that personality, and you're responding to that. Ub Iwerks saw this, was blown away, dragged Walt in to see this, in Kansas City. Many of the early Disney animators said this is what inspired them to get into animation. And to give you an idea of how impressive this was, when the Disneyland TV show in 1954 did a show on the history of animation, Dick Humer, who was a writer and an artist, had gone and seen McCay on stage do this so many times. He was able to recreate the script, because no script existed. He was able to recreate the script exactly and direct an actor to do this. So we've got Gertie here, And, of course, this is another example of California crazy architecture, how something represents what it's being... Wait a minute. What does a dinosaur have to do with ice cream? Do we have any guesses here? You know, she's covered with ice and snow. In fact, steam is coming out of her nostrils, even as we're watching right now, right? Because she's so cold. People think, oh, it's a dragon, it's breathing fire. No, that's steam because she's so cold. Well, nowadays we know that the dinosaurs probably became extinct because a meteor hit and there was dust in the air and it killed vegetation and all that. But in the 30s and 40s, what did we think killed the dinosaurs?
The Ice Age.
The Ice Age. So that's why you have ice cream, and that's also why on the sign you'll see it's ice cream of extinction, not ice cream of distinction, which would have been the phrase from the 30s and 40s to do that. And she really does have personality, because if you walk a little further up the pathway, and on your left you see these concrete steps going down, take a look in the ground, and you see Gertie's footprint, and you see it cracked around there too. So it's as if she had actually walked and then decided to just settle right there. But again, that's another of those ahas. And in fact, the Imagineers call that an aha. And the reason for that is that when you see it and you make the connection, you go, aha, aha. You know, I think the most common one is over there at the Magic Kingdom at the foot of the steps of Tony's restaurant. Mm-hmm. You look down on the sidewalk, and there's the heart in the cement and the two set of dog paws, just like from Lady and the Tramp. You know, and 9 out of 10 people miss it, you know. But usually a kid is the one to spot it, because they're lower or they're looking down, whatever. And you see that and you go, has that always been there? Oh, my gosh.
And I think there's different levels of aha moments. There's the Tony's aha moment. There's the aha moment I had when you're describing Walt's first, studio up above there, because I would have thought that was just a clever sign, not to have. But again, we talked about the integrity of the story and that there was a meaning behind it.
Yes, and again, you have to know the story. And so, I'm not adverse to making changes. Walt wasn't. Walt always said, yeah, you can pull things out. Yeah, you can take the flying saucer right out of there, but you've got to replace it with something at least as good, but you've got to shoot for something better. And it's got to work with everything else that's in there, and don't shoehorn it in and try and come up with this fancy this was really, No, that's not what that is. Take that extra moment and think through the story. I know there's a business need for this. How can we, make that happen? Well, like Tony Baxter with Splash Mountain. Dick Nunes kept pushing and pushing and pushing for a water flume ride, and he couldn't come up with that storyline. And then as soon as, America Sings was going to close, he had that aha moment of, I bet if I took those characters, they're very similar to Song of the South, we could do that, and we could put it in Bear Country, because that would fit in with that. And, by golly, that'll pull people over to that area. And, of course, it became Critter Country because it refers to what Uncle Remus said. In the old days, the humans were closer to the critters and the critters closer to the human, and it was better all around. That's why it's Critter Country, because there was only one bear in Song of the South. That was Brer Bear. So, well, we've gotten off a tangent here. And so let's go past Indiana Jones here, because that's a whole nother podcast, except to remind listeners of what they could do at the left entrance of Indiana Jones. What could they do, Lee?
Always pull the rope. If it says don't pull the rope, pull the rope.
And actually there's a series of about 6 different things that get said, and it's amazing how many of those are out there and around, and doesn't cost you a penny. Doesn't cost you a penny, and yet it gives you a smile that can last for the rest of the day. But yeah, we're at the end of Indiana Jones here, because I want to point out something. I know I talked with you about this on the phone, but once you see this in person, I think this is going to blow you away.
Let's go. And as we're walking this way, sort of around the circle, I encourage people to go back to the outpost and go behind the outpost, because there's such great detail. And if you're an Indiana Jones fan, there's great details. There's great props there, as well as right across from the entrance here as well. Jim, don't pull the rope. Warning.
Oh no! Oh, blimey! Oh! Careful! There's an artifact down here.
Brilliant. A throwaway effect, but it's brilliant. And as we walk by the dip site, you see that it's dip site number 1138 for THX 1138, George Lucas's first film.
So I wish they had done more in here. Obviously, the security guard is studying acting and all that. But this blew me away the first time I discovered this, that standing here, see, the pathway is different. Take a look at the trash cans.
Right.
Take a look at the lamp posts.
And let's just try and describe for people where we are. So if you're walking around Echo Lake towards Star Tours.
Well, we're right across from the Radio Disney. Okay. Yes, where we're standing right now is we're standing right across from the Radio Disney studios. We're there. We're not quite to Star Tours. You might even hear the Jedi Training Academy in the back there. We can see it, but and actually we're also across from the restrooms as well. There's a red guard shack, and of course inside the guard shack are some of the items that the guard would have, including a book. Apparently he's studying acting like everybody else. But again, as I said, I grew up in Hollywood, and I actually visited some of the movie studios. You know, we talk about studio tours. Universal started their first tour in 1915.
Wow.
Yes, and then the tram came in, which was innovative, in 64. But other studios like 20th Century Fox and all offered backstage walking tours because I went on with, because my dad knew I was fascinated by film, so you would pay this premium price and you could go on this walking tour. I was backstage in the 20th Century Fox in like 68, 69, walking back there. But one of the things all the studios had is, I'm sorry, it's something I ate, right? And Lou and I were talking about that too, that when you hear that sound, that's also like the billboards, the foreshadowing of, oh, I want to know where that is. I want to go take a look for that and all that. So we're standing, there's this guard shack, and of course the board is up so that we can get back and forth, but at a real studio you'd have to, get clearance from the guard to go from the real world, into the backstage world, and that's exactly what's happening here. Because if you take a look at the pavement from where we've just come, it's that red Disney pavement and all that. Once we get past the guard shack, it becomes that blacktop. Because again, that's backstage. We don't need to put in all of that attention to detail. On the side where the guests are and the public is and all of that. The trash cans, they're green. They have nice little emblem on them, all of this. When we look past the guard shack, they're gray. And you don't have that little emblem. You have waste, please. Put it in there. You take a look at the lampposts. They're very elaborate on the right-hand side. But when you take a look to the left-hand side, you've got the green and it's curved, very utilitarian. Even the landscaping. On this side, it's trimmed, it's beautiful, you have the flowers. Over here, it's overrun. And in fact, towards your left here, it would even be considered what would be a tree farm. So you would plant and unplant these things. And even though we're hearing Star Tours, that themes in with this as well, because as you go, into the village there, you see that it's just a facade and all that. Yes, that's because that's where filming is taking place. That's not the real village. It's a set. And it's backstage. It's on the back lot.
That's why everything is taking place on a sound stage here as opposed to what we see on stage on the side.
And even the restrooms, right? A little tin building, It's not those, that nice, beautiful ones. But let's curve back around over to the plaza with the bus there, because we've got some stories for that.
And as we're walking away, we're turning around and looking, and the name of the restaurant is the Backlot Express. And if you go through the outside and the inside, you see, like we were saying, the areas of the paint shop, and there's lots of little models and lots of props where the stuntmen are. There's a lot of real props from old films, and now, again, there's the aha moment that it just makes sense that we are backstage.
And yes, and it's just a short walk. We're over here right now. We're over in the plaza of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And this is actually a duplicate, because the real Academy of Television Arts and Sciences is in North Hollywood. And they also have a plaza with bus and all of that, and they induct people. And right now, Lou and I happen to be in front of the one for Walt Disney. Walt Disney was inducted into the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame in 1986. And they induct usually about 5 or 6 people at a time. So he was inducted same year as Jackie Gleason, Mary Tyler Moore. I believe Steve Allen was that year as well. And we're looking at this bust of Walt, and this has a very, very interesting story. If you go around to the back of the bust there, you'll see that it has the signature of the artist, B. Gibson, Blaine Gibson, the fellow who sculpted the Partner statue and the Roy statue at the Magic Kingdom there. And the story behind this really is that in 1963, as a gift for Walt, Blaine sculpted a bust for Walt, a bust of his head there, and took it into Walt as a gift. And Walt literally said, what the heck do I need with that? You know, statues are for dead people. Get that? And Blaine was just literally crushed, and he took it out and stored it in his garage for decades. And when Marty Sklar approached him about, let's doing the Partner statue, Blaine found the old bust in there and pulled that out to use it as reference because he had sculpted it while Walt was alive. And of course, it was also the basis for this bust that we have here. And this is actually a I don't want to say a duplicate, it's sort of a recasting because the original is at the one out in North Hollywood. But again, even as we sit here, we see all of these people just walking by, not even giving a second thought. And Walt's right up here in the front. He's not even hidden in the back with some of these folks. And you take a look at Walt, and he's so happy and all of that. And he's looking out over this park as well.
And you're right, it's a shame, I think, that people just walk by. They don't come in, not only to see some of the other beautiful sculptures, but in the back there are rows that have names of other inductees throughout the years as well.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So we've made our way to the original icon, or the original Weenie the Park, the Chinese Theater, which is one of my favorite places, and again, just replete with details above and beyond just the handprint and the nose print, as it were, in the cement.
And again, in the background, we can hear High School Musical 3. And so when researchers pull out this podcast 20 years from now, they go, what is that was happening? I don't understand what that was there. Yes, Grauman's Chinese Theater, and again, was owned and operated by Sid Grauman. And he had several theaters. He had the Egyptian Theater. He had the $1 Million Theater. All of this in Hollywood. So he was a very popular character, and this was designed to actually be the castle at the end of Main Street. And to that end, this is literally full size. They found the exact same blueprints from 1926 and recreated it. In fact, that copper roof up there, that's 22 tons, and that was lifted up separately, by a crane. Now, the one major difference is we see over here towards the left is the ticket booth. The one in Hollywood, the ticket booth, of course, is right in the front. So, because you're going to buy the tickets to go on in, and you see out in front the Chinese lions, the Chinese foo dogs, and of course to again tie into the theme of China and all of that. And in fact, out in front of Chinese restaurants, you'll see them, and you can tell the difference between the male and female. Because if you go take a look, and most people take a look at the face and all that, nope, take a look at the leg, because the female has her paw on her upturned child, and the male has his on the royal ball of authority there. And again, they were foo because that was the spirit world. So during World War II, when fighters saw strange things in the sky, they didn't call them UFOs, that didn't happen until the 50s, they called them foo fighters, that they couldn't identify. So we're entering through the spirit world into the world of entertainment. And of course out here, Lou and I are getting a great kick out of seeing people, put their feet into the footprints in their hands and all of this. And being a California boy, I saw that out in California all the time. And I learned a very important thing, because to me, I was putting my footprints in this. I later found out that actresses who put their feet in the cement would purposely wear smaller shoes so that they would seem more feminine and all that. Men would purposely wear larger shoes than what they normally wore.
Now, don't keel over when one of these 14-year-old girls says, "Who's Lucille Ball?"
Yeah, listen, I've worked with college interns, and every day it just surprises me that, these were Sonny and Cher. You never heard of Sonny and Cher? You never heard of, what is this? Anything that happened 2 to 3 years ago is ancient history? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Let me get out that old man cane and wave it in the air and bend. Now, in our forecourt out here, and I keep saying our forecourt because I was a Disney cast member for a long while out here, the last imprint was made in 1999. And there's some funny things to take a look at in the forecourt. For instance, Charlton Heston misspelled his name. So he was writing his name, and in the middle of doing that, somebody yelled out, and he forgot to put in the L. So it's Charlton Heston. Lonnie Anderson's had to be removed because she's so slight, she's so petite, that she did not make a sufficient imprint into the cement so that when it rained, it was very slippery. And people couldn't see that indentation, so they slipped. So, again, took that out. There have been some stars that have done their imprints, but they were never placed out here, like William Shatner and all of that. Michael J. Fox used to come out all the time and put his feet and his footprints out here, and handprints and all of that. And I was pointing out to Lou along the side entrance here is a little plaque that says the Grauman's Chinese Theater, which, opened in Hollywood, California in 1928. And that always bothered me because it's 1927. And go take a look on Wikipedia and pull out your Encyclopedia Britannica. It's all 1927. It's not even a question of, was it late in 27 and early in 20? No,
1927 was a soft opening. 1928.
Is that it? And so finally I cornered an Imagineer and I said, that's really embarrassing. You want to change that. And he says, no, Jim, it's an inside gag. I said, what do you mean it's in 1928? What are we referring to Steamboat Willie, whatever? He says, no, there is 1,928 feet of track in this attraction. I said, I don't think that's much of a gag. He says, no, but it's true. That's why that's there. And of course, a lot of one of my favorite rides. My parents loved always riding this when I brought them to the park. A lot of great things in the Great Movie Ride, of course. And again, that's a whole nother podcast of this and that. But let's give you a couple of ahas for you to play with. In the Western scene where the sheriff on the balcony pops up to shoot the bank robber, Thomas Jefferson.
Really?
Yes, the Thomas Jefferson audio animatronic. So Thomas Jefferson, our first gun-toting president there.
And that's something that Imagineers have done for many years. Spaceship Earth, we've talked about. I think William Howard Taft was one of the Egyptian
eunuch.
Right?
Yes, there's no other way of saying it. You're either a eunuch or you're not a eunuch. There's no in between there. And the two gangsters in the gangster scene who are shooting at the car, Squint and Beans, they're two pirates from Pirates of the Caribbean. Wonderful stories. You see Jimmy Cagney in there, but that's not the outfit that he wore in Public Enemy. And because his family wanted him to look good. So that's actually James Cagney's tuxedo. He didn't wear it in the film, but he's wearing it now for forever. You don't hear Ingrid Bergman talk because we couldn't get approval for Ingrid Bergman to talk. We actually lost the rights to Marilyn Monroe's voice, so that's why she doesn't say hi in the movie at the end anymore. Yes, because we have to pay for.
You got to pay for every hi.
We had to bring down Gene Kelly and give him a lot to drink before he signed off on his. And again, if you were here in 1989, his umbrella was open.
Right.
But what would happen is the water would hit the umbrella and then hit people in the car. That's why his umbrella is closed now. So, different things in there, so very exciting. But again, as I said, a whole nother podcast for us to go through. But and it's sad seeing you can just walk straight on, But again, people are in there, and I bet they don't recognize some of those actors or even some of those films. So very very sad about that. But that's okay. Let's do happy times. Let's go over to those archways in the Brown Derby, because I got some great Brown Derby stories. Let's head over.
Awesome. Okay, so we've walked sort of clockwise past the entrance to the Great Movie Ride.
And actually with the entrance now of what is traditionally called the Animation Courtyard, and it's got that brand new sign up there, Disney's Hollywood Studios. I still miss the Leo the Lion logo and all of that. And carrying on with the theme of Hollywood Studios, we talk about branding and all of this. A lot of studios had their own distinct entrances. The gates at Paramount, very, very familiar, almost instantly recognizable. And so the gates leading in to the Animation Courtyard here are distinctive as well. But again, it's got to be generic, because you can't use characters and themes from studios like Universal or 20th Century Fox or whatever. And so if you take a look at the bottom of the archway, starting at the lower left, you see the different genre of films from the 30s and 40s. So you see the baggy pants comedian with his bow tie and odd hat, and then right above him is the traditional detective from film noir, and the Busby Berkeley musical girl, and you have the Western. And then when you go over to the other side, you have the couple representing, the dramatic movies. You have war movies, in the World War I helmet there, science fiction, and then horror. And then again, another aha moment for you, and it will be for all of these people, because you know what? Everybody listening to this, when they bring their friends and family here, not one of them will say, I heard this on Lou Mangello's podcast, or Jim Korkis. That man is incredible. He just knows everything. What is that? So as we come closer, we see that there we have two animators, one working on a board over to the left, and he's drawing Donald Duck pictures. So you've got your hidden Donald Duck in there, and a whole series of that. And then on the right, you have an animator who's looking at the Moviola, the finished version, and there you have a hidden Goofy. You have the hidden Goofy on the screen, and then on the film strip that comes out of it. So again, very nice touch, something that people really don't recognize. But something that people should recognize is over here is we're going to the Hollywood Brown Derby. And one of the questions we always get asked is, how come it's not in the shape of a derby? Well, there were several Brown Derby restaurants. The original in 1926 was on Wilshire Boulevard, right across from the Ambassador Hotel, and that was in the shape of a derby, a brown derby. And again, you're talking about California crazy architecture, and this was done literally on a bet of that, you could have a restaurant in the shape of a hat, and as long as the food was good, people would still come in and do it. And they were right, and it was so popular. But again, you're in the shape of a hat, so you can't expand that concrete hat. So they built a second version on Vine Street, and actually that's the one that's more popular and more familiar than the hat. And this is what the one at the studios is based on. And one of the reasons this was more popular was because it was closer to the movie studio. So people could come over, on their lunch hour or whatever, go in there. And the Brown Derby was very popular. The booths, of course, were cut down so that you went there to be seen. People could see you. You weren't hidden in the booth. And one of the major innovations is you could have a phone at your booth. So you could literally take a phone call from your agent, or you could phone somebody to have that. In 1934, this Brown Derby was taken over by Bob Cobb, who was a friend of Walt Disney's. And in fact, in later years, they were huge baseball fans, and they were on the advisory board of Gene Autry's California Angels. Well, Bob Cobb is the one who really brought recognition to the Brown Derby, and This is the funny story. Is one night, because again, Bob Cobb was living up above on the second floor, and he was good friends with Sid Grauman, Grauman's Chinese Theater, which we just passed. Well, about 2 o'clock in the morning, Sid Grauman shows up roaring drunk, pounding on the door. And so Cobb has to come down, and he has never seen Sid Grauman like this before. He'd been celebrating something, and he didn't want to let him loose, without sobering him up. But the restaurant was closed for the night. So I went to the kitchen and saw, okay, what do we have in the refrigerator here? Well, there's a hard-boiled egg, there was some lettuce, there was a tomato, there was bits and pieces of things. So he took them all out, put them on the cutting board, and chopped them up very, very finely, and then mixed them up all together. So literally, Grauman didn't have to really chew. He could just, swallow this. So sobered him up enough so that he could go out, and then Cobb went back upstairs to go to sleep. Next day in the restaurant, Sid Grauman, now perfectly sober, comes in and in a loud voice orders a Cobb salad. And what is that? What does Sid Grauman want? What is that? Show me what that is. And so that was the birth of the Cobb salad. Now, this Brown Derby was also famous for their grapefruit cake, because in those days, actresses were also on diets. And the very popular diet at that time was the grapefruit diet, that if you had a grapefruit a day or whatever, it got flushed out of your system or whatever. And so Bob Cobb found that people were not ordering desserts. So what he did is for Luella Parsons, who was a Hollywood columnist and who threatened, and she says, unless you get a dessert that I can eat, I'm never coming back to the Brown Derby. He came up with the grapefruit cake, which again is yellow cake, but it's filled with this grapefruit cream cheese icing. So it's actually got more calories than a chocolate cake. But boy, you'd see these little petite actresses, and they were gobbling it down like, I'm on a diet here. I'm going through this for all of this to happen. Brown Derby was one of the favorite locations for Walt and Lillian to come and eat. They had a couple of favorite restaurants, but this is one of the places they like to come out and eat. There's actually a book out there that has a couple of pages that Brown Derby printed. It's out of print now, but you can find it through all sorts of sources, I'm sure. Has a couple of photos of Walt and Lily sitting at the Brown Derby table, enjoying a Cobb salad and having a wonderful time. Well, we've curved around this way. Why don't we try and make our way through the crowd over here, and we'll get Sunset Boulevard. We'll walk down Sunset Boulevard.
Perfect. So as we start our journey down Sunset Boulevard as it intersects with Hollywood, before we even make our way down, and granted, we could probably spend hours and individual shows on some of these buildings and what's inside each themselves, but I'm going to start off by telling people to look up, because the first thing you see, in addition to the beautifully ornate lampposts, is the car stop and the overhead wire. And again, it goes back to what you were talking about before, the red car.
Right, absolutely. And I get grumpy about a bunch of things. I'm not grumpy about this. I grew up in California, so I know that Hollywood and Sunset never intersect. They're parallel. All right? I understand that. But they've done such a wonderful job with Sunset Boulevard that, I really don't have any complaints. I'll suspend my disbelief for that. Yes, the line along the top there was for the Pacific Electric Trolley, the red cars, and we were just taking a look at that map of how extensive they were, how much area they covered. And, by 1943, 1944, they were providing service for 109 million rides yearly. For that to happen. And, of course, we start with the barn itself for the Pacific Electric Company. And, again, 1928. So, again, that's referencing Steamboat Willie and the start of that as we go across. But there's all sorts of wonderful little touches that we're missing. So right across the street, if you look into the sidewalk, you'll see the contractor's imprint in there. Mortimer and Company, 1928, contractors. So just right on the edge of the sidewalk, take a look at that. And actually that appears more than just there. It appears elsewhere on this street here. Nice little touch. And, of course, Mortimer going to be Mickey's original name before he became Mickey in 1928 there. And the tip board that you have there, again, set up very much like arrivals and departures on the red car. And in fact, you'll notice that the information there is written up there in chalk, just as you would on a real tip board. And a lot of hidden surprises over there, because you notice around there, even the merchandise stands that are selling pins and all that are done up like suitcases, so people ready to go. That fountain you see there is one that is, talk about shrink and edit. This is very, very small. This is the Mulholland Fountain, which was named after William Mulholland, who brought water to Los Angeles, which would have been a desert otherwise. Actually, he stole the water, but that's another story. That's not a Disney story. And so that's on Los Feliz Boulevard, and a place where sometimes people would go skinny dipping. You wouldn't do that at the Disney Hollywood Studios, but that would be here. So lots of nice little touches along there. And again, we talk about foreshadowing of events coming on, and we see just to the side of that Pacific Electric Trolley building, right above the canopy that's covering the gold car out there, is a billboard for the Hollywood Tower Hotel. And again, this is giving you the clue of, whoa, this is going to exist, but you get this feeling of foreboding because the trees covering up much of this sign and all this. Why haven't they trimmed this away? This is a billboard. Don't they want people to see this? Don't they want people to come and visit? And even if you take a look at the colors have started to fade on that. And as we start to move down Sunset Boulevard here, we'll be taking a look at some of the movie theaters. And these movie theater facades, again, based on actual buildings in the Hollywood area. So, and even if you didn't know that, you get that sense of, hey, it's real.
And so as we start our journey down Sunset Boulevard, again, Jim, like we were saying before, many of these streets are sort of paralleling or analogous to Main Street. And don't just look inside the shops at the facades of the shops, because there are signs on the sides of the road. There are props on the side of the road. There's a cigar store Indian on Main Street, where here we have, again, referencing the luggage that you saw down by the train station. You see some luggage around a sign for California's Route 66, the infamous Route 66, which, as you said, ends on Sunset Boulevard and begins back in
Chicago. And who else began in Chicago and ended up in Hollywood? Why, it's Walt Disney. And if you ever forget when Sunset Boulevard opened, as you see this pole, just look straight across the street at the building over there. Building 94. Sunset Boulevard opened in 94.
See, again, that brilliant attention to detail. And again, like I said, like Main Street USA, look up on the second floors of the windows, because there you'll find not names necessarily of Imagineers, but you'll find references to films, you'll find references to some of the icons and landmarks. And if you go around the corner of Villains and Vogues, right across from the DVC kiosk, and if you look up, you find Max's Classic Directing Academy.
Right. It's near the Muscle Beach Bodyguard Service. It says Max's Classic Directing Academy, the latest movie techniques, and you have an old-fashioned movie camera, and then you have the quote, "Are you ready for your close-up?" Well, what does Max and all of that have to do with this story? Well, there was a movie, Sunset Boulevard, and that's the famous line from there, "Are you ready for your close-up?" And yes, her assistant was Max. And so that's where that comes from as well. So again, all these nice little touches. Do most people see this? No. 11 out of 10 people miss this all the time. So, but now you won't, and you'll be a hero for your friends and family. And we're actually continuing to go down the street. There's some wonderful shops. The Mouse About Town has some wonderful photos in there, if you haven't seen that, of Walt playing polo and swimming, doing some sports work. But over here to our left, we've got the Sunset Ranch Market, and this was designed for to emulate the farmers market at 3rd and Fairfax in California. And if you found myself stumbling there, it's because I just came across something that had changed, and I can understand why it changed, but again, it just took me by surprise because I didn't know. Usually on the left-hand side, we would have Fairfax fries, and it would be Fairfax because Farmers Market is on 3rd and Fairfax. But again, that was being run by McDonald's, and McDonald's has moved out, and so now we've got the Toluca Legs Turkey Company, and of course that references Toluca Lake for that. Farmers Market started out with by two guys who tried to create a location where farmers could bring in their produce, their trucks, and put their trucks around there, start to sell off some of that stuff. And they thought, well, if we build little stalls, we can charge them, 50 cents, a month to use those little stalls. And it grew up from that. But remember, we were talking about the storyline and how we're progressing and how I was so sure the story wasn't going to go beyond 1945. Because you see that huge clock tower in the back. Mm-hmm. The clock tower was not built at Farmers Market until 1945, right? So we know that it's at least 1945. It's not before that, but it's probably not much after that because a lot of these things haven't changed. And let's go back and take a look at a lot of these things because since it is 1945, we're talking the World War II years. And there are some interesting references here, especially if you're a Disney fan, that again, looking around the corners, you may have missed, you may never have seen before, so we want to point that out. So we're maneuvering through all of the tables and benches here because we're heading over to Rosie's All-American Cafe, and of course that references Rosie the Riveter, when women would take positions of the men when the men were off to service. But right around the corner, you see a propeller attached to the wall, and then you see this insignia. This is part of Disney history. This is actually the very first military insignia the Disney company did for the military. That was for the Flying Tigers. And let's give you even more value for that. That design was by Roy Williams, the big musketeer. Final art was by Hank Porter. And this was for General Chenault's Flying Tigers. And Roy Williams later admitted to me he had made a huge mistake because the name of the squadron in China was the Flying Tiger Sharks. And so if you look at the planes, they actually have shark teeth on them. But the translation that came to the Disney studio did not translate shark, so he drew a tiger with wings. And that's the way most of us think of the Flying Tigers now, although the original name was the Flying Tiger Sharks, which was probably a lot more vicious. And, of course, we're going past Catalina Eddies, which, of course, refers to Santa Catalina Island out there just off the coast of Los Angeles. And we're heading to, on the side, the Victory Garden. During World War II, people were encouraged to grow their own fruits and vegetables, so the fruits and vegetables that the farmers were growing would be sent overseas to the men in the service. Now, over here, it's very funny because you have a flight uniform as the Scarecrow. Up here, you have the sign that says Victory with Vegetables, and you have 3 dots and a dash. Da, 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 da. And what does that mean? Da, 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 da. Well, for those of you who stayed in school and stayed off of drugs, that is actually the opening of Beethoven's 5th Symphony. And 5 in Roman numerals is a V. Dee, 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 dee. So when you watch all those old cartoons and movies and you see that, that was a way for people to reference V for victory. So again, some very nice touches over here, but again, away from the main thoroughfare, so we lose a lot of that attention to detail. Now, Lou, of course, was very excited, to point out, they still have the electric line up there for the red cars, and in fact, down by the entrance to Tower of Terror, you can actually see the tracks creeping up through the pavement. But the one red car that still exists here, that seems to have broken down, there's a reason why that's here. It's a reason for those of us who have very, very short memories. Because, Lou, when did Sunset Boulevard open?
The real Sunset
the one here at the studios. I don't mean to put you on the spot here.
94.
And in fact, you can see that the number on this...
Well, I bet you it's June.
Well, why do you think it's June of 94?
Because you just pointed out that on the red car it says that the number of the car is 694 for June 94.
Absolutely, 694.
The answers are right there in front of you.
I know if you know where to look. And I would say one of, I keep saying, one of my favorite locations. There are just so many things that are our favorite, is the reproduction of the Carthay Circle Theater. And the Carthay Circle Theater is very important in terms of Disney history, because that's where the Skeleton Dance, the first Silly Symphony, premiered in 1929. And in fact, the owner of the theater, Fred Miller, really took a chance because Walt couldn't sell that cartoon. People kept saying, give us more mice. We don't understand this. Skeletons dancing. So Fred Miller took a chance, huge success, and so the film was able to be booked into New York's Roxy, and it went on, for the whole series. And so Fred Miller was willing to take another chance in 1937 and hosted the premiere of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Another huge hit. Also at the Carthay Circle Theater, only one of 2 theaters that was fitted out with Fantasound for Fantasia in 1940. Gone with the Wind actually premiered at Carthay Circle Theater in 39, and unfortunately around, I believe it's 1969, the entire thing had to be torn down because not earthquake safe, not earthquake savvy for that. So a great loss. So once again, the Disney Hollywood Studios has the only representation of something from the Hollywood of the 30s and 40s. But again, people walking straight by, doesn't make a difference. The Beauty and the Beast theater here, the Theater of the Stars, is actually based after the Hollywood Bowl, which is the largest natural amphitheater in the world. And in fact, Frank Lloyd Wright's son worked on designing that. And as I said, at the entranceway to Tower of Terror, you can see where the pavement has worn away, so you can see the bricks and the rails for the red car. But you also notice as we go in towards the Hollywood Tower of Terror, there are gates, and it says Sunset Hills Estates. Well, this is actually a recreation of the gates that went into the Hollywood Land real estate development. And as we go down here to Tower of Terror, and we won't go much into Tower of Terror because, again, that could be an entire another podcast, but just a couple of items that Lou and I had talked about previously that want to bring out is you do not go into the Tower of Terror through the entrance. You're actually going in through a side door here. And again, since this was based after many of the popular hotels in Hollywood, like the Chateau Marmont and all that, they had those little side entrances for celebrities. The entrance, which has, the porte-cochere and the turnaround and all that, is actually the exit by the gift shop here. So that should already tell you this is an attraction you may want to think twice before you go on, because you're exiting where you should be entering. Never a good idea. Never a good idea. And again, wonderful attention to detail inside the Tower of Terror. And no, Walt was not a big Twilight Zone fan. He never mentioned that. Not a big, friend of Rod Serling and all of that. But again, this just seems to work, And Tower of Terror, I guess we can thank Michael Eisner for again, because it was his original idea. It was going to be a resort hotel. And but probably not a good idea to have murders and screaming while you're trying to sleep at 2 a.m. And how are you going to train all of that staff to handle all of that? And then Mel Brooks took a shot at this. And
a very different attraction that had Mel Brooks gotten his hands on it.
And then there was a version where they were filming a horror movie that was narrated by Vincent Price, before they finally came to this. But one final misconception before we wrap up this day, because Lou has promised to take me out to lunch here. And so I've been trying to find the most expensive place here at the Hollywood Studios as opposed to the places that I enjoy the most. But just to get rid of one conception, of course, is that the elevator does not fall. So you can tell your friends and family it does not fall. Okay, because of course if it fell, in order to have everybody safe at the bottom, it would have to curve, so you'd be on your back, and that doesn't happen. So you don't fall here, you're actually pulled down. There's a double set of cables on the top and on the bottom. That's how they can change the ride sequence, but they still pull you down faster than gravity. That's why if you hold that penny in your hand, it'll float up. But a little something, and I don't know whether Lou knew this, when they were testing it, they brought it down, and they actually blew out the bottom. Because the air compacted, they didn't realize that. Boom! That's not a good idea for that to happen. So, Lou, I'd just like to thank you so much for this opportunity to share these stories. I hope those people who are listening to the podcast will go out there and share it with their friends and family. Hope it's given them a little bit of insight into the Hollywood. It's still hard for me to call it Disney's Hollywood Studios. It'll be Disney's MGM Studios for a long while for me and probably for a lot of others. But one of my favorite Disney theme parks, and maybe we'll get together and cover some of the rest of this sometime.
Absolutely. And Jim, thank you so much for really just, believe it or not, so much detail, but we've scratched the surface because there is so much more detail. And you know what? I want people to come out here and not necessarily make the dash for Toy Story, but take the time and explore the park. And explore the park during the day and explore it again at night, because it's a much different experience there. And you have you've given us many aha moments, and it's been a lot of fun, touring with you in person. I hope people at home get a sense of it. And again, take this with you when you come to the parks and really try and pick up these details and talk to cast members. Look up, look down, touch what you think you're not supposed to touch. If the sign says don't pull the rope, pull the rope. And again, why I think Disney's Hollywood Studios is really just such a treasure trove of so many wonderful details. So,
and if people love these tours, they should be picking up those CDs you have.
You're shameless.
And what are those two areas that you cover? And you go through just like we just did, a walking tour. It's Adventureland and Main Street, isn't it?
And more to come.
And more to come.
So
and what a wonderful investment. And haven't you written books? Shouldn't they be picking up those books too?
We're gonna eat.
And Celebration magazine,
of which Jim has actually written some amazing articles for the magazine. Most recently, Peter Pan, The Adventurers Club. I won't even hint to some of the other good stuff that's coming. But Jim, thank you for all that you do, for sharing this information with me and with the listeners, and I hope that they share it with others, because you are just such a wealth of information, and you really are a value to what the Disney company tries to share with their magic. So thank you.
Keep the stories alive, keep the magic alive, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
It's time to reveal the answers and winner of our last Walt Disney World Trivia Contest, and the theme of the last contest was Space Mountain and the Wedway People Mover, because they were both going down for refurbishment the weekend of April 18th, so I thought it would be fun to honor these two classic attractions. I asked you 5 trivia questions about these two attractions, as well as a bonus question, which you did not need to get right in order to be entered to win. If you got all 5 correct, you were put into a pool where I randomly selected one winner. If that person did get the bonus question correct, he or she will get a bonus prize. But first, let's go over the questions and answers. Number 1, I said that Space Mountain was made up of 2 tracks, and although they're nearly identical, they're different pretty much only in length. So I asked you, what were their names and which one is longer? And most of you knew that when you get to the white control tower as you wander through the queue, if you go to the left, you will ride the Alpha track, which is 3,196 feet. If you go to the right, you'll be riding the Omega track, which is 3,186 feet. Alpha is 10 feet longer to accommodate the track layout. Question 2. On each of these 2 sets of tracks, 13 trains carry passengers into the depths of space. And I asked you, how many passengers can fit on each train? Each train actually consists of 2 single-file rocket-shaped cars that seat 3 people each, so the answer, of course, was 6. Many of you threw in the bonus information that, yes, from when the attraction first opened until a refurb in 1989, each of the rockets featured 2 seats, where you would have a front and a rear passenger, kind of like the Matterhorn bobsleds in Disneyland, but currently each of the cars holds 3 passengers. Again, the answer was 6. Question 3. I asked you, what former guest on the WDW radio show was a lead designer for Space Mountain? And most of you knew that it was a legend of Disney Imagineering, George McGinnis. He played a large part in the creation of not just Space Mountain, but the Mark 6 monorail, Horizons, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, countless attractions. You can actually hear Mr. McGinnis talk about not just Space Mountain, but everything that he worked on during his career at Disney in episode 27 of the WDW radio show. Question 4. I said that Space Mountain has gone through a number of changes through the years, both inside and out, one of which was the loss of the tall white pylon outside the queue. And this pylon had a mock-up of a single ride vehicle that had 4 passengers in it, which kind of gave you an impression of what was to lie ahead inside the mountain. I said that each of the 4 passengers was dressed alike, so I wanted to know what were they wearing and what type of patch was affixed to each of them. Each of the 4 passengers was dressed in their very funky, very 70s white spacesuits and helmets, and each had a NASA patch on their right chest. The final question was about the Wedway People Mover, Tomorrowland Transit Authority, known as the Blue Line in Tomorrowland. I said that if you listen very, very carefully throughout Tomorrowland, you'll see and hear that there are other lines that travel through this working community according to story. I wanted to know what were those other 2 lines and where do they go? Well, the other 2 lines are the red and the green line, and the red line takes passengers off-planet to other destinations in the galaxy, while the green line provides local transportation to Tomorrowland's hoverburbs. Now, the bonus question, again, which you did not need to get correct, was about the TTA as well. Like Space Mountain, that has gone through its changes, so I wanted to know who originally sponsored the TTA, Wedway People Mover, who was the original narrator, and who was he replaced by? And the original sponsor was the Edison Electric Institute for America's investor-owned electric companies. The original narrator was Jack Wagner of early monorail fame, and he was actually replaced by ORAC 1, ORAC 1, the commuter computer. So bravo to all of you who got that right, and it was many of you. I've got to start asking questions that are not so easily Googleable. So anyway, the winner this week is going to get a Walt Disney World Trivia 2009 page-a-day calendar, the audio guide to Main Street USA, a WDW radio show button, and a copy of Celebrations Magazine issue 3, which just happens to be all about Tomorrowland. Now, our winner this week is Cheryl Chip Buchanan. So congratulations to Cheryl. Please email me your address and I will get your prize package to you out right away. Now, there won't be a new contest this week, but I promise I will have another trivia contest in the next week or 2, so definitely stay tuned. I hope you're having fun playing these. I hope maybe you're learning a little something along the way as well. Congratulations again to everybody who got the questions correct. And again, stay tuned for a new contest coming very soon. That's all the time we have this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. Big thanks also to my very special guest and good friend, Jim Korkis, for walking through Disney's Hollywood Studios with me. Thanks also to everybody who came by my Meet of the Month this month on Sunday at the Magic Kingdom. I appreciate it and really enjoyed meeting all of you. And as long as we're talking about Meet, I wanted to tell you about another Meet that's taking place later on this year. The NFFC, which is the Club for Disneyana Enthusiasts, is going to be holding an all Disneyana show and sale on Saturday, December 12th, 2009, on Walt Disney property at the Regal Sun Resort in downtown Disney. I will be attending. I'm likely going to have a table as well. Hope to have the opportunity to meet you down there. The show and sales are a lot of fun. Great place to find awesome and very unique Disney collectibles. The show and sale is going to open to the public at 10 a.m. It's going to end at 4. There's free parking over at the Regal Sun. Admission at the door is just $5. And obviously, once we start getting closer, I'll give you more information about that as well. In the meantime, you can go to nffc.org for more information. Also, they're going to be hosting Lunch with a Legend. There's going to be a luncheon and a dessert reception, as well as an auction to benefit Give Kids the World. The Lunch with the Legends is going to be held that Friday night, December 11th at noon, and the dessert reception and auction is going to be held Saturday night, December 12th, after the show and sale at 7:30. I'll link to the website in the show notes, but you can go to nffc.org for more information about the Lunch with a Legend and the auction and show and sale as well. Another NFFC meet that I'm going to be attending later on this year is the Pacific Northwest Mouse Meet on Saturday, August 15th, 2009. That's going to be in Linwood, Washington, just 20 miles north of Seattle. There, Disney fans from all over the Pacific Northwest and Florida, obviously, are going to be gathering to meet other Disney fans, podcasters, authors, actors, lots more, to make and share many, many memories. There's also going to be a Disneyana show and sale, guest speakers, pin trading, displays, collectibles, a hidden Mickey hunt, lots more surprises as well. That website is PNW, Pacific Northwest, PNWMousemeet.com. Again, I'll link that up in the show notes and talk more about that event as we start getting closer. Don't forget, if you have questions that you want answered, you can email me at lou@wdwradio.com, or you can be heard on the air by calling the voicemail at 888-703-2171. Don't forget to come over, follow me on Twitter, get my instant updates. You can play the Where in the World Am I games, my Finish the Sentence games, lots more. It's free and it's fun. Also, come by, friend me up on Facebook, join the WDW Radio Show group. I post a lot of announcements there as well. Links to all these right on the homepage of WDWRadio.com, where you'll also find the forums. Come by, you can chat about the show, chat about Disney news, chat about the parks, play games, take polls, lots going on there. We have more than 30,000 registered members at the WDW Radio forums. Again, fun, free, very, very welcoming. Please come on by. Stay tuned. I will be doing another WDW Radio Live audio and video broadcast coming very, very soon. I will post when that's going to happen, not only on the show, but on Twitter and Facebook as well. If you haven't had a chance to check them out yet, I invite you to please come by the website. Check out some of the new daily Disney Diary videos that I've been posting from my trips and from Walt Disney World. They're about 5 minutes right from the parks, covering a wide variety of topics. A lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoy those. If you subscribe to the show in iTunes, they should automatically download for you as well. And as always, if you like the show and the videos, please help spread the word. Let others know about us. Review it in iTunes. Come say hi over on Facebook and join the WDW Radio Show group. And of course, my friends, thank you so very much for taking the time to listen to the show each week. I really do appreciate you tuning in. So until next time, remember to always keep moving forward. Follow your dreams. I hope you have a great week this week. See ya.
this is Erica from Fort Lauderdale. I'm a first-time caller, and as I listened to the show this week, the top 10 things with to do to Disney in the rain, and I thought of a couple that I truly love. I love to go, I know you already said this, but going to MGM, it's amazing, or Disney Hollywood Studios. It's so awesome just to walk around and see everything that happens in the rain. It's like amazing to see all the lights light up. Oh, it's amazing. Another thing to do is to walk through the castle in the Magic Kingdom and just to sit there and look at the mosaic on the wall and just to take in all the atmosphere. Another thing in Magic Kingdom is just to, like you said, to go in Main Street shops. I definitely agree with you. That is so much fun. Even if you don't want to splurge, just to go and look outside and see all the families running around trying to get out of the rain. It's kind of funny. And one more, Epcot. Just walking through all the different countries is awesome. You can see all the different cultures and everything. It's amazing. And you can maybe go on some of the rides there. It's awesome. I definitely recommend people who are going to Disney and it's raining just to stay. It is awesome. Maybe you should even try to plan it. Hell, I don't know. But love the show. Thanks for letting me call. You get my fill every week of Disney. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, Lou. It's Leslie Henson, Disney Fan 83 on the forum. And I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed your interview with Charlie Ridgway. It really was fantastic, and I love so much hearing his walk down memory lane on the opening of Hollywood Studios. A lot of really good information in that interview. Thanks a lot for that. Also, I'm really looking forward to you having Josh on the show. I think it'll be a fantastic show, and I hope that's coming up soon. And I just want to give a shout-out to Becky. Hi, Becky. And I look forward to seeing both of you at Adventures Club Weekend coming up in the fall. Congaloosh. Thanks so much. Bye.
Hey, this is Corey. Well, today's my birthday, April 28th. I'm 17. And unfortunately, I couldn't be at Disney World. I was just there the first 2 weeks in April. And I told my mom, I'm like, I'm not going to be here for my birthday. And she's just like, well, anyway. So unfortunately, I didn't get into Disney World for free, but it's okay. But anyway, I just wanted to say I love your show. And I'm a huge Disney World fan as much as you are. I watch your podcasts and everything, so just keep it up and thank you. Bye.
Hey, Lou, this is Colby Carden from Columbus, Georgia. Just wanted to share an awesome cast member story. I was sitting down by the pool a week or two ago on our vacation at Wilderness Lodge, and I had one of my refillable mugs, and I'm watching my kids go down the slide, have a great time. And I'm sitting there, and one of the lifeguards comes over and says, hey, man, are you having a good day? I said, yeah, I am. He goes, look, I don't care, but you got this cup in your hand, and you're really not supposed to have cups, within 5 feet of the pool. But it's okay with me. But, if another lifeguard comes and hassle you, I just wanted to give you a heads up. Somebody might say something. So, just whatever you'd like to do. And I immediately went, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll take my cup and put it by my seat. But, man, it's just wonderful customer service. It's not so much what has to be said to somebody, but it's how they say it. And I read somewhere that one of the Disney philosophies of customer service is, if a customer has to be wrong, a guest has to be wrong, let them be wrong with dignity. And that's the way I felt. But that's why I keep going to Disney and why the magic is there. And it's a great lesson in business that I try to apply to what I do every day. Thanks, man. Keep up the great work. Enjoy the show. Take care.
Hey, Lou, this is Jeremy up at Fort Knox, Kentucky. How are you doing? Hope you're having a magical day. Sent you an email a few days ago. Reference to some family members of soldiers possibly coming down to Walt Disney World as a big trip in October. It's all in the planning stages right now. Just kind of needed some advice from you. So in one of the emails, I gave you my number. Hopefully you're having a great time, and hopefully I'll see you in June. We're coming down the 7th through the 15th, so hopefully you can work it out to where the mouse meet and all that stuff together, or meeting of the month, I should say, and hopefully we'll link up. Finally get to meet the guy my wife says I stalk. So talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Hey, Lou, it's Josh. I I was just listening to your recent show. It's Tuesday right now at about 4 o'clock, and I was just listening. I never really listened to the whole email segment where you answer the emails. Like, oh, is mine on here? Nope, not going to listen to that. So I was listening, and you actually did mine last, and it was the top 3 things of your collection. And I was listening to all the stuff that you were naming off, and I was just I wanted to say, if there's any room in the will, just remember me. And Lou, if you're wondering why I call in about 3 times a week, it's so I have a surprise at the show. So when you play it, I never know which one you're going to play. And, well, hope you guys like the show, and bye.
Hey, Lou, this is Craig Wheeler. Was just listening to your latest show, number 116, and a listener had written in and asked about Jungle Book at Walt Disney World. And 2 things immediately came to mind. The first was at Pop Century in the 1960s building. There's a giant statue of Baloo and Mowgli. The other thing that I think of is, well, it's a extinct attraction now, but when Animal Kingdom opened early on, there was the Journey into the Jungle Book show, and that was there for about a year at the theater in the wild, and that was a show that basically followed the story of Mowgli with the Jungle Book. So hope that helps your listener out a little bit. Take care, and thanks for the great show. Bye-bye.
Hey, Lou, it's Josh. I already called once today, but I just remembered something that is very important. It is, I know on the show earlier I said how I found out the show, that I was just typing in WDW, but that is not the actual story. I have been getting on your website, WDW Trivia, for a while, and I actually got a hiddenmickeys.com, Hidden Mickey Guide, or DisneyWorldTrivia.com, one of them, and it had a link to the WDW radio show, and that's how it happened. So, everyone, just keep listening to the show. Thanks. Bye.